Light pollution is the only environmental disaster that vanishes the instant you flip a switch. They turned the lights off, and nature came back the same night. Not in weeks, not in months, within minutes. This is the story of the most reversible environmental disaster on Earth, and why one of the simplest conservation tools ever discovered is a light switch. For billions of years, every living thing on this planet evolved under the same predictable rhythm of light and dark. It's encoded in the DNA of plants, animals, insects, and us. And then, in barely a century, we rewrote that code with artificial light at night. As physicist Christopher Kiba put it, for nocturnal animals, the introduction of artificial light probably represents the most drastic change human beings have ever made to their environment. Light pollution now affects 80% of the world's population, and it's accelerating fast. Between 2011 and 2022, the average night sky got brighter by nearly 10% every single year. Much of this acceleration comes from the global transition to LED streetlights, which emit more blue light than traditional sodium lamps. At that rate, a child born under Bortle Class 4 skies, where 250 stars are visible, would see only Bortle Class 6 darkness, with about 100 stars by the time they turned 18. We're erasing the night sky in a single generation. Even the diffuse sky glow from distant cities affects wildlife miles away from the original light sources. But here's what makes this story different from almost every other environmental crisis. Unlike carbon in the atmosphere, unlike plastic in the ocean, unlike chemicals in the soil, light pollution vanishes the instant you turn off the source. The pollutant simply ceases to exist, and when it does, life responds with a speed that has stunned even the scientists studying it. The most dramatic proof came from an unlikely laboratory, the September 11th tribute in light in Lower Manhattan. Every year on the anniversary, 88 searchlights project twin columns of blue light 4 miles into the sky. It's a profoundly moving memorial, but it's also an irresistible trap for migrating birds. Researchers from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology spent 7 years monitoring those beams using their birdcast migration tracking system, and what they found was staggering. When the lights switched on, bird densities in the airspace above Lower Manhattan surged to 150 times their normal levels. As many as 15,700 birds would pack into a half-kilometer radius around the beams, circling in confusion, burning precious energy they needed for migration. Kyle Horton from Cornell described it simply: there's almost this magnetic pull of birds to these lights. Scientists call this an ecological trap, when artificial signals lure animals into environments that appear suitable but are actually harmful. But then something remarkable happened. Whenever volunteers on the ground counted more than 1,000 birds trapped in the beams, the memorial operators would shut the lights off for 20 minutes. And within minutes, just minutes, the birds dispersed. They reoriented. They resumed their migration south. The moment the artificial signal disappeared, millions of years of evolutionary programming kicked back in. Over 7 years, researchers estimate 1.1 million birds were affected by that single installation. The solution wasn't to dismantle the memorial, it was to give nature brief windows of darkness. Now multiply that effect across an entire city. On the night of October 4th, 2023, Chicago experienced what might be the worst single-bird collision event ever recorded. Nearly 1,000 migrating birds, mostly warblers, slammed into the McCormick Place Lakeside Center, a 2.6 million square foot glass building on the shores of Lake Michigan. Volunteers from the Chicago Bird Collision Monitors arrived at dawn to find what one observer described as a carpet of feathered bodies. Dave Willard, who spent 40 years collecting bird strike victims at the Field Museum, once held a dead rose-breasted grosbeak and reflected, if it hadn't been for a building in Chicago, it would be spending its winter in the foothills of the Andes. McCormick Place responded. They invested $1.2 million in bird-safe window film, the largest bird strike mitigation project in the world. By September 2024, researchers reported a 95% reduction in collisions compared to the same period the previous year. 95%. Annette Prince, director of Chicago Bird Collision Monitors, said something that should be on billboards. You can save lives with the flick of a switch, and it's not just birds. On a beach in Ventura, California, western snowy plovers had vanished. These small shorebirds nest on open sand, relying on darkness to hide their eggs from predators. But nearby industrial lights had turned their their nesting grounds into something resembling permanent daylight. When plant managers agreed to dim the lights, the very next breeding season, in 2013, 10 snowy plover nests appeared on previously barren beachfront, not after years of recovery programs. The next season. In Florida, the stakes involve one of the ocean's most ancient creatures. Sea turtle hatchlings are born with an instinct to crawl toward the brightest horizon, which on a natural beach means the open sky reflected off the ocean. But coastal development has reversed that signal. Hatchlings now crawl toward hotel lobbies, parking lots, and highways. Hundreds of thousands disorient each year in Florida alone, and an estimated 30% of all Florida hatchlings have died as a result of artificial light disorientation. When coastal communities switch to wildlife-friendly amber lighting or simply turn off unnecessary lights during nesting season, the hatchlings find the ocean again. The instinct was never broken, it was just being overwhelmed. Then there are fireflies. Their bioluminescent flashing isn't decoration, it's communication, it's courtship. Males flash specific patterns, females respond, and that exchange is how they find mates. Artificial light drowns out those signals entirely. It's like trying to have a whispered conversation in the middle of a rock concert. If they can't see each other, they can't reproduce, and firefly populations are declining worldwide. The insect toll extends far beyond fireflies. A landmark study led by Douglas Boys from the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology found that streetlights reduced moth caterpillar populations by 47% in hedgerows and 33% in grass margins. 70% of moths flew toward street lamps and away from the flowers they were supposed to pollinate. The researchers were, in their own words, quite taken aback by just how stark it was. So, what does the path forward look like? It's already being built. Over 30 cities in North America have joined Lights Out programs, often coordinated with organizations like the Fatal Light Awareness Program, or FLAP. Portland, Oregon designated an entire month as Lights Out Portland. France imposed strict nighttime lighting laws and saw nighttime brightness fall by 33% as cities turned off streetlights after midnight. Washington, D.C., Illinois, and Chicago have passed legislation requiring bird-safe building design, and the Pacific Island nation of Niue became the first country certified as an international dark sky sanctuary. The common objection is safety. Won't turning off lights increase crime and car accidents? A 2015 study published in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health examined what happened when British authorities reduced nighttime street lighting to save money. They found no increase in car accidents or crime. None. The fear, it turns out, was brighter than the evidence. Here's what strikes me most about this story. We live in an era of environmental problems that feel impossibly complex. Solutions that require decades, technologies that don't exist yet, international agreements that may never hold. And then there's this, a problem where the fix is immediate, affordable, and proven. A problem where a badger's behavior can recover within a single summer after lights go dark, where birds reorient in minutes, where plovers nest the next season, where a 95% reduction in deaths costs less than many cities spend on a single intersection redesign. Every night during spring and fall migration, over 80% of North American migratory birds navigate by starlight. Hundreds of millions of them pass over our cities, our suburbs, our coastlines, and every unnecessary light we leave burning is a false star pulling them off course. As Amy Frankel of the Convention on Migratory Species warned, light pollution can stall the recovery of threatened species and interfere with their ability to undertake long-distance migrations. But the flip side of that warning is the most hopeful sentence in modern conservation. As soon as you turn that light off, the pollutant disappears and species can begin to return. Tonight, not someday, tonight. Nature fights back. We tell the story. Thanks for watching and see you next time.